Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Podcast Strikes Back. My name is George, and you're listening to our movie review for Colossal, the indie kaiju film starring Anne Hathaway. We saw it this week, and by we, I mean Connor and Benny.
Hey guys.
That's the enthusiasm I'm looking for. Good stuff. This was a surprising film. I wasn't really expecting where it went. Benny, how did you like this film?
I saw this a few weeks ago, pre-release. Not really. Yeah, all I'd seen was the trailer sometime before. And I went in kind of expecting, very much one thing and got something very different that I absolutely loved. It's a hard movie to talk about without revealing too much, but yeah, awesome. Connor?
Yeah. I remember driving home after I'd seen this film and trying to figure out how I felt about this film. I remember driving home thinking, like, I'm pretty sure I enjoyed it. Pretty sure I loved it, in fact. But because it's just not a conventional... I don't find it to be a conventional film. I just couldn't kind of like tick the boxes that I would normally tick to say, is it a good film? Like, it was just so different, which I loved.
Yeah, I think I came into this film expecting a quirky indie comedy, dramedy. I was very, very surprised by how deep this film goes. It really has lots of layers to it, and it touches on some issues that we're, continue to face as humans. I really liked how it addressed those, and the portrayals, particularly by Anne Hathaway and Jason Statham.
Jason Statham's in this film?
Jason Sudeikis. Jesus. All right.
A very different movie.
Jason Sudeikis really crystallized those themes and brought them home. And I loved that. I thought this film was just so much more dense than what I was expecting.
The way it dealt with giant monster attacks in Korea was beautiful. Heartrending, almost. Yeah. The main thing that I want when I go to the movies, which is so rare, especially after years of just watching movies after movies, is to be surprised. And this one did that for me.
I can't stress this enough to people. If for some incredibly strange reason you're listening to this podcast and this review before you've seen the trailer, don't see the trailer. Go into this movie completely blind. Turn off this podcast immediately.
Never come back. Never listen to us again.
and run to the theater and watch this film.
Dive out the window.
This is a movie that once I watched the trailer, I was immediately concerned because they had shown the gimmick of the film, and my main concern was how are they going to build a story around the gimmick? Because you can only do so much with it. And I'm even hesitant to say what the gimmick is, but this was probably the biggest surprise and the greatest thing about watching this film was how they dealt with it and how they were able to move around it and even go beyond it.
I think the gimmick of the film actually becomes superfluous after a while.
It almost does. It's almost like almost a mechanism by which you can actually get the conflict of the film.
I think it's almost like a hook for the film to get people like, maybe someone like us who, if this was marketed as more of a dramedy, maybe people wouldn't have that X factor that it does with the hook of the film.
We can't keep dancing around this. We've all pretty much said go see it if you haven't.
Yeah,
obviously.
If you've seen it, don't go see it again because
don't do it.
No, one time seeing it only.
One per customer. So yeah, spoilers from here on out for Colossal. Yeah, let's jump right in. You go into this movie expecting it, if you've seen the trailer, to be a really blunt metaphor about alcoholism, which there's a lot of that there. But then, halfway through, a third in, it just pulls the rug completely out from under that and becomes this really interesting kind of look at gender politics, wherein the character played by Jason Sudeikis reveals himself to be much darker than he initially seems, playing very much against his very typical persona. And doing so amazingly, I thought.
Great casting.
His was probably the best performance. Oh, I mean, like Anne Hathaway nailed it. But just because
he had an arc, didn't he?
Not even like a reveal, I guess. He had a reveal.
Yeah, that's it.
Whereby his character he usually plays these like happy-go-lucky, sarcastic kind of I don't care type characters. Whereas in this one, while you got a sense of that to begin with, amazingly dark performance that came out towards, I guess, the middle of the film.
I didn't see the trailer for this. I just sort of heard rumblings of it, and I wanted to kind of keep it pretty fresh. So I didn't really know about the alcohol undertones.
Neither did I.
It. So that immediately I was like, okay, now this is dealing with something very interesting. And Anne Hathaway is in this loop, in this cycle in her life, and she can't get out of it. Really well handled. And then, as you said, as the plot goes on, we get this reveal of, dealing with issues of violence against women, dealing with gender politics. Yeah, nice guys actually holding blackmail, ransoms over, in these relationships.
This ownership of this character
exactly.
from several men in the film.
Yeah.
And it was just a really fascinating way that the trajectory of the film went that I wasn't expecting. And I thought that it dealt with those issues in a very poignant way.
Very unique way as well. Just not something that I've seen. It felt like the kind of thriller horror with being a little bit more grounded. Because a lot of these kind of insane... Well, I say grounded in the sense that I understand that this is also a film about how you have a monster counterpart when you sit in a children's playground. For me, it kind of felt like a more grounded thriller type situation where he wasn't... At no point did I feel that he was the kind of comic book evil type thing. He was just a very disturbed person.
Well, not even that. He was just a very realistic character who I'm sure many women have encountered in their lives. Someone who just comes across as a nice guy who wants to help and then just reveals this kind of darkness to them.
People put on a front and people present themselves in a certain way. And then, once you get to know them and you start to see them in their everyday life, different parts of their personality reveal themselves. And that's what happens in this film. Jason Sudeikis is actually a very menacing and manipulative character.
The bar scene where that really comes to the forefront was amazing.
Yeah.
From everyone.
Yeah.
Yes.
All the performers.
So I think the unspoken... I was thinking about this. There's an unspoken villain in all this, for me at least. And I can't even remember his name. It's the guy... It's her love interest.
Her boyfriend?
Alex?
No. The guy that she...
Oh, the young guy.
The young guy, yeah.
Yeah.
I felt a strong level of hate towards that character for his, I guess you could call it cowardice. And it's a part that's played by so many people that sit by and watch this kind of shit unravel. I just felt like there was such a complacency in that character.
Well, that's what this movie did. At every turn, it revealed what Anne Hathaway's character and what women in general sometimes have to go through, where, one man turns out to be this violent, dangerous person. Her ex-boyfriend turns out to also be just trying to control her in a lot of ways.
Bit of a dick.
Absolutely, yeah. And then this young guy who seems very sweet, he just stands by and does nothing for anyone. And same with the older drunk character. And it really is a story about Anne Hathaway realizing about how she has to look after herself, really, because all these guys are horrible in their own way.
Yeah. You would normally expect that young guy, the love interest, to be eventually the savior.
Well, yeah.
But I'm glad that he was. I'm glad that he was kind of the unspoken villain in all this.
With Dan Stevens, her ex-boyfriend from the beginning, he was very much seemed like a good guy at first, and seemed like he, maybe she would end up going back with him or something. So I was so happy when this movie kind of revealed him to be kind of just as much of a loser as these other guys, whereby he was, trying to control her life, and if she wasn't doing it his way, then it just wasn't good enough, and just the kind of person you have to get away from. Absolutely. Bearing
in mind that she is also a shitty person in all this.
She was very much, but she was trying to get her life back on track.
Yeah, I liked how there was no kind of clear good or bad person in this film. It's a bunch of shitty people.
I don't know, man. I think shitty maybe in her lifestyle choices, but I think in her heart, she wasn't a shitty person.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd agree with that.
It's pretty clear cut when she's, getting her life back on track very successfully, and she's a waitress, and Dan Stevens comes in and is like, "You're a waitress? What are you doing?"
Yeah.
It's so condescending.
Yeah.
It's
so
controlling. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But what I loved about this film was we hear a lot in today's age, strong female leads. This film needs strong female leads, and we don't actually need strong female leads. We need women with layers, and we need them to be true. We need them to be complex. And I think this film, we saw a strong female, but in a completely different way, because as we said, she's down and out. She's an alcoholic. She's in this terrible cycle, and she's in a lot of ways she's weak. She's held by her addiction, and but through this whole film, like, she has to step up, and she does it in a way that's not your typical Hollywood route to get there. And at the end, she goes to the bar in Seoul, and maybe she's going to have another drink, who knows, but she stands for something bigger than her addiction. And she fights for that. And I really liked the complexity to her character. I liked the gray area. I loved Anne Hathaway's performance. I just thought it was a really well-written character. And it's something we don't get to see enough in today's age.
Yeah, totally. It was so much better than, exactly what you're saying, a strong female lead, which in Hollywood's eyes is always just... she's a woman, but she kicks ass.
Yeah, like what's potentially going to be Charlize Theron in Atomic Blonde? She kicks ass.
Yeah,
which
this
I think
is much
also
better
need.
and more important, which is just a complex character, an actual character, which so few women seem to get to play in movies.
I think we've spoken a lot about the more drama aspect of this film. How did you guys think the kaiju hooky aspect of this
We
film
haven't actually
was
mentioned
handled?
that at all,
We
have
haven't
we?
mentioned it at all, because for
The film
me,
is so strong thematically.
For me, as I said, it seemed very superfluous after a while, and I wasn't really that sold on the mechanics of how the monster was appearing, and she was walking by this playground, and her prior history with Jason Sudeikis' character, and how he destroyed a diorama. I wasn't really convinced on that whole thing, but I asked myself the question, did I necessarily need to be sold on that to love this movie? And I think the answer is no, because as we've been speaking about, this film's heart is in the drama and the story of Anne Hathaway's character and the relationship between the characters, and less so about the kaiju.
Yeah, I was fine with the mechanics. It seemed the mechanics made sense in terms of what she had to do to get where and do what.
It seems so specific, though.
I mean, yeah.
They laid it all out, though.
Yeah.
it was very consistent with
so
its own
convenient
rules.
that it seemed like just I had to just cut. You
Yeah.
either went on the ride or you didn't.
But I think with a movie that has so much going on under the surface like this, it ultimately doesn't matter at all. Like
Totally.
Totally. To the point where, you could almost call it superfluous, but then you'd have a movie that literally no one's ever going to see.
Yeah.
I have a bit of a pet peeve when people say, isn't that convenient in films? Because without convenience in films, there's not much of a story,
Yeah,
really.
nothing would be happening.
Yeah, you don't see people doing normal things in films, because then it wouldn't be a story worthy of a film.
Yeah, the story of a woman who goes back to her hometown and doesn't discover that she's a kaiju
Exactly.
in Korea.
Yeah, for me, if you're telling a story because it is spectacular. And therein lies why there's a coincidence. So in terms of it being super specific, I'm okay with that, because I just don't think that there would be a story without it. Well, I know there wouldn't be a story without it, and therefore it doesn't really affect me in the same way.
I don't know, man. There's a difference between things being convenient and by, happenstance or circumstance, and, people bumping into each other on the sidewalk that haven't seen each other for 10 years. Those situations that happen organically versus just things happening for convenience, for plot points. I'm not going to hold it on those things, but sometimes if they're not set up in the right way, but if those, if that pet peeve of yours, the circumstance thing, it can detract from a film in a lot of ways. If it's not set up in the right way, it can detract from a film.
If it's ridiculous enough, then yes, I can see where that kind of distracts and can make it. There's a level of too much convenience, which I understand. But in terms of this kind of convenience, I just feel like, in my mind, the way I think about it is that there's 100 different stories out there, all where she doesn't go and find this really specific thing, and they're all more likely, but they're all stories that aren't worth telling. And this is the one that she does do that, and it is the one worth telling, which is why we're getting it. So, yeah, in my mind, that doesn't detract from the story. The mechanics I felt were fairly cleanly laid out. The only part that I didn't quite understand was how she found where in Seoul to stand to make the monster appear in the playground. But that, again, at that point,
Yeah.
I was kind of with it.
This is a movie that's entirely about metaphor and thematics, though. It's like picking it apart on a plot level it just seems ridiculous to me. Like it's just not about that at all. Like it's not a movie meant to be taken literally in any sense.
Just some of those elements didn't quite work for me. But as I said, the meat and potatoes of this film is in those character relationships. Did you guys see any kind of parallel with sort of the way we consume news and social media and her looking at these articles about soul on the internet? There was something interesting there that they didn't all go the whole mile with, but there was a layer in there that I really liked.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, layers on layers, but yeah, that definitely took a backseat for me when the movie kind of revealed what it was really about. There was definitely something there, but that's not really what I was
I'm glad that they didn't delve into it. They made a very poignant statement at one point that said, basically, we're not going to care about this because it's so far away and we're just getting it on our tablets and our TVs and it doesn't matter. And I think that was enough. Like, I think that's a good little tidbit, a little commentary on that. But I think in a movie like this, too many themes and too many metaphors probably would make it overbloated. Yeah. I liked the... I liked where they kind of hit their strong points and ran with them. I think if they had started exploring all these different themes that you could possibly explore, again, you don't really get a story; you just get a commentary.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I feel like this is going to be a pretty divisive movie among general audiences. Absolutely, I can imagine a lot of people coming out of it just saying, "Oh, what a waste of time," and just not kind of engaging with it on any level. I'm glad we all seem to have fallen on the right side of history on this one.
It does seem like a very kind of hot and cold film where people will either get it, and I don't mean that in a condescending way.
I do.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I mean, like, it's just it certainly isn't everyone's cup of tea.
It's very quirky.
Yeah, it's very quirky. There are times where I don't want a critical analysis of things when I watch a film, and I can very much see people going into this film expecting one thing and just not being in the mindset to receive what this film is actually about. So if people don't enjoy it, I kind of understand why. But I think it's just one of those situations where I was lucky that I went in with it with a blank enough slate and was in the mood to be watching a film that is quite cerebral and quite, a lot of metaphor and analogy and stuff.
It was a nice cool down after the Fate of the Furious.
Completely different gear.
Great double feature.
Yeah.
I think we're all on the same page here. It's I don't know what's going on this week. We all seem to be agreeing.
Unless we're talking about Harry Potter.
Unless we're talking about Harry Potter, in which there are some serious disagreements. Check out the top 8 for that.
But yeah, fantastic film. Definitely recommend it to your friends because we need more films like this, and be talking about these issues that are in this film because it's something that needs to be discussed, and I think this film discusses them in a really poignant way.
Definitely going to keep an eye on this director.
What's his name?
Nacho. That's all you need to know.
Nacho business.
Nacho Vigalondo or something. Very cool. He's released a lot of really cool marketing material for this movie.
Has he?
Him talking about other movies while extremely hungover. It's good stuff.
I really, speaking of the marketing, again, so glad that I only saw one little teaser. And I think they released just enough of this film to hook people in.
Enough to give you kind of the vibe of it without really spilling the beans.
Dark, quirky comedy type film.
Oh, okay. So so this guy's done Time Crimes.
Time Crimes.
He also did a segment in VHS Viral from 2014 and in 2012 The ABCs of Death, which is a really cool sort of horror anthology series. So interesting to hear that he comes from a horror background. You can kind of see that in this film.
You can feel it, yeah.
It's a horror without being, bloody and guts. It's horror of the human condition.
Yeah, there's definitely an intensity in there.
This is a thriller in terms of it's kind of like the psychotic thriller.
Really? I would almost call it a comedy drama thriller.
I mean, if we want to kind of get into
sci-fi,
sci-fi,
fantasy magic,
monster movie, dark comedy.
Do not try and categorize this film.
Yeah.
I think it's a mistake, and especially if people haven't seen it, just trying to tell them a genre even, I think would just give away the game.
I think this film is very indicative of this era where we're getting a sort of melting pot of genres and subject matter and the postmodern, kaiju and drama, intense topics being dealt with. Just good stuff, man. Great film. Happy days.
Hell yeah.
All right, that's it for our Colossal review, guys. Please check out our review for Fate of the Fast and Furious 8, whatever the hell it's called. And every Sunday, we have top 8 movie news up. Please check us out on iTunes and YouTube. That's it from me and the boys, Connor
Bye.
and Benny.
See ya.
Thanks, guys. Peace out.